It's never possible to predict which radioisotope nuclei is going to decay next, but what we can say with certainty is the length of time it will take for half of the nuclei in the sample to decay, and that's called half-life. It's the time it takes for half of the nuclei to decay, and that can be expressed in a graph like this. As you can see here on the y-axis, we have got the percentage of the isotope, and it's called the parent isotope, and that is what the nuclei is before it decays. So for example, if we're talking about carbon, it decays from carbon to nitrogen. So the parent isotope is carbon and the daughter isotope is nitrogen. After one half-life, there is 50% of the sample has decayed, and there's 50% left. After another half-life, 50% of this sample has now decayed, so there is a quarter of the original sample after two half-lives. After three half-lives, there's a quarter, an eighth of the original, and it gets less and less and less. There's some radioisotopes that have a half-life of a few seconds or a few minutes, and there's others that have a half-life of millions of years. Here's carbon-14. You may have heard of carbon-14. It's used in carbon dating, and it has a half-life of 5,730 years. It can be used to date things that used to be living, and the reason for that is every living thing contains carbon, and when it's living, it's always continually taking in carbon, and some of that will be carbon-14. So something that's living is going to have a set proportion of carbon-12, carbon-13 and carbon-14. Once the organism dies, it no longer takes in more carbon-14. So after that period of time, the carbon-14 nuclei within the organism are just going to decay and die and decay and decay and decay until there's none left. So scientists are able to take a sample of it and put it through a machine to determine how much carbon-14 remains. So, for example, if they determine that there's 50% of the carbon-14 remaining, it means that the sample is 5,730 years old. If there's 25% remaining, it means it's 11,460 years old, etc. And of course, every spot in between can be used as well with an appropriate scaled graph. So scientists are able to predict the age of an artifact or a specimen by calculating the percentage of carbon-14 and by knowing this constant rate at which carbon-14 decays.